You have a landing page and you wanted to make money, so you stumble upon a high converting landing page blueprint and you look at it and you start thinking, I think I'm gonna need that. Okay, stop, throw those away. I will show you a much better two-step process to optimize conversions on your landing page, and we'll go through one of those high converting blueprints, explaining why it's not the best choice. So while you might think you're doing something good for your brand, it might be the opposite.
Starting with the header, obviously we need to have strong branding, which in this case means just a logo. Then a scroll down menu, which is links to content that will scroll on click to a relevant place on the page, so just scroll down. And then we repeat the CTA in the top right corner so it stays up as you scroll. Many of them say that there should be a pre-headline defining the user group, but why? Why does it matter? Then big text about it as the main headline, but it doesn't really specify what kind of a message it should be. And describing what it does in the description is kind of redundant, it's too obvious. I also seen a couple of examples of something like bullet points on why it's cool. Yeah, sure. And then the CTA button being labeled just as CTA button doesn't tell you anything about what to do here. And last but not least, the key visual, which is the visual used for emotional connection with the users, but generally what they write about it is some nice image of people using their product or just some pretty graphics. It never says how it should be connected to the text on the left and why. Then, practically always, we have some social proof, which basically means user testimonials. And it is an important part of a website, but should it really be here? Then the next section is how it works, which is more info about how it works, and it usually has a button to go to a separate page to explain even more. But ask yourself this, does every website need this section, and does it always have to be exactly here right after the social proof? Then many of them add something called the main benefits. So why is it better than the competition? And it's usually just some image and some text underneath that. But once again, is it necessary here? And what if there is no competition? And then we have some more complex case studies as social proof. So this is kind of like testimonials, but longer. And why are they here? Why not at the top instead of the simple testimonials? And then most of them show pricing, and it usually is like a free, standard, and expensive or enterprise plan. And it just shows the plans. They have the same buttons, the same kind of styling, and it doesn't really say why they differ and why should you care. Which is wrong, because pricing plans are one of the most decision influencing parts of any landing page. And in those high converting blueprints, they are just a wireframey thing that, yeah, add pricing here. And then we have the FAQ, which is obvious, and it actually is something that most websites should have. But most of them fail to add an ask a question button. In this case, we have one, and that's good, because there might be questions that aren't answered in the FAQ and people still want to know. And then we have a call to action summing up all of the above and a big button. It usually is the exact same headline and the exact same description and the exact same button as above. Then we have some contact email and social links. And in worst case scenario, we also have a contact form, but please don't do contact forms.
Now that we got those high converting landing page blueprints out of the way, we can focus on what matters, the two-step process. Step one is all about showing a problem and a solution that your customer can identify with. And then step two is clearing doubts. There are multiple ways of doing that, so let's quickly break down the two steps first. And obviously there are some extra steps after that are on most pages, things like pricing or FAQ or the footer, but those things are a baseline, so it's not really about them. It's about everything that's above, the two steps.
So you start with a problem and solution section, and people have about 4 seconds to fully understand that problem and that solution. If you fail to deliver that within 4 seconds, you already failed and they will click away. They need to be hooked in the first 4 seconds, and then you have about 2 minutes to clear their doubts. And this is important because if it's just 2 minutes, you can't have all of the possible clearing doubts section that you can think of. So you got those 2 minutes to do it. And if you spend more time, you risk having them cognitively overloaded. You don't want that. And then of course we have an option to show the pricing, but we don't always show the pricing on landing pages, more on that later, and the standard ending of the page, the FAQs, final CTAs, and the footers. So the first section is the hero section, the section where you define the problem and show a solution. You need to clearly say what problem it is, for whom, and what are the benefits. You can add a little bit of extra info there if you need to. And then the second section is all based on research, so you need to ask the users what are the main what ifs that they're asking themselves when looking at your product or service. And just adding testimonials below the hero section doesn't really clear the what ifs. It clears maybe the very first fear of maybe this platform has no users so I don't want to try it, but it doesn't necessarily answer the questions or clear the doubts.
So now let's go through an updated landing page blueprint, but this time one that's not assuming anything. I'll walk you right through it, explain all the annotations and how you can use them to make your website way better.
Okay, the strong branding is obvious, we're keeping the logo. We also have the scroll down menu with the links, that is also obvious, but depending on whether we have the pricing here or not, some of the links might be going to separate pages, not just scrolling down. And then notice how on those blueprints they always show the CTA repeat the exact same color and style as the main one. We don't want that because we don't want it to compete for attention with the main CTA. That's why the secondary one is way less prominent, way less visible, and it can light up with a background color once you scroll past the main section. The first section is not a pre-headline, it's a kicker, and you can use it for a little bit of social proof, like proving the traction, like how many users does the platform have. The headline is not just some big text. It needs to clearly show the problem and the solution, something people identify with, and you need to use very simple words so they don't need to decipher it. Use the description to show how you do it. Of course, you don't need to give away company secrets, just explain why your platform or service works. The little check marks or icons or sometimes even emojis are for internal and or external validation. So here's where you put in the numbers or that you were awarded by somebody. And then the main call to action should be clear, visible, and it also needs to connect to the headline. So if you're talking about something in the headline, it shouldn't just say next or sign up. It needs to be matching the headline. And then we get to the key visual. It's not just about having some pretty images or blobs or light rays here or clouds. You need to show the connection between the headline and the description. So for most industries, you need to use some human touch to make this stronger, but generally the key visual needs to completely complement the headline. That's why you first need to have that headline and the description before you even start making the visuals. And most designers do it completely the opposite way. The first hero section is the problem and solution section that we've seen in our previous diagram. And we can clearly divide it into a place where you'll be starting to clear the doubts. This is the most important section because it doesn't have a blueprint. You need to use research to figure out what parts of this section and in what order do you even need. Because yes, there is the basic social proof, which is testimonials, text and video, preferably both. There is the complex social proof, like case studies showing how people use the product, and all of them need the main action repeated next to them because for some people it might be convincing to just see a part of your website. Then you have the external validation, so that could be an article from a respectable newspaper talking about your product, or a couple of logos of big companies using it. And then you can add some explained use case. For complex B2B products that are pretty expensive, it's actually good to show that they have multiple angles of approach, which means multiple different client types can use them. So let's write about every possible way of using them. We did this recently working on a medical startup that catered to different kind of medical establishments. We created a pretty complex list of different use cases and even different client categories. So you might be a small beauty clinic doing hair transplants or a huge hospital with a completely different use case. And you just see yourself on a list, you click on it, and you then see how specifically this product is solving your problem. And then, of course, there is the benefits or comparing to the competition. But still, there are some companies that have no competition or no direct competition, or they don't even want to talk about their competition because, for example, they are the most expensive out of the similar platforms out there. So they don't want to give you ideas on where to switch. And then we have the pricing section. Not all websites should have it right here on the main page. In some cases, it's actually best to add that one extra click when people are deciding that they actually want to use your platform, because if they already took that action, they are way more inclined to proceed further. And if they see a price that's way too high for them right on the first page, yeah, it kind of drops the conversion right there. And if your price is on the high side, having a separate page to just explain the pricing and show the plans might be a good idea, because you can then focus on that page to only clear the doubts about the price. And with plans, you shouldn't really treat them like three elements that are exactly the same. You should treat them like a low friction plan, one that can get a foot through the door. And then you put the plan that you want everybody to choose and the high friction plan for not that many clients. And the main purpose of that most expensive option is so people will know that the main one, the blue one in this case, is the one that they really want, and they'll be saving a lot of money not buying the red one. So there is quite a bit of psychology on how to do the pricing plan and how to measure the friction and use friction to your advantage to get the users to subscribe to the plan that you want them to subscribe to. And then the FAQ section is pretty similar on all those pages, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's a way to clear a couple of extra doubts in text form. But always remember to have the ability for the customer to ask you a question and then be sure to reply quickly, because that may be very helpful in the buying decision. Now, I wouldn't repeat the exact same headline that you have on the very top, because now people went through the website and they know a little bit more about the product, so you don't need to be as brief. You can actually go a little bit more in depth. It's also a good way to test a completely different headline that kind of has the same overall general message, but different words. You also don't need to describe the product anymore, because they have read the description at the top and they know all the benefits. So just summarize them here and then have that main action front and center, visible and easy to click. Have a contact email and make sure to have the social links, because for many companies, people actually use it as form of a social proof. They will click on your social media links, and if they notice that you have one subscriber, then yeah, they might not be that keen to buy from you. Sorry, this is how the world works. So you need to actually work on those subscribers and followers everywhere to get those numbers a little bit higher up.
Okay, and that's it. Thanks for watching. This is a new channel, so I appreciate all the likes, comments, and subscriptions to it, because we will be doing more in-depth breakdowns like this. Next time, we'll take care of the hero sections. So if you have a business that has a hero section on their website, comment your business category down below, and I'll try to add that category to my redesign process. Meaning I will explain how your product category can benefit from the best possible hero section. But that's coming next time. And for now, keep on optimizing.